Hello guys, a couple of weeks ago you seen me button the wheels on these SIKU motors here, ready for the W190, our new Holland loader here. And this and the Komatsu are kind of the models I most want to get done, and so it's been killing me not to be working on this because the Komatsu is very difficult. It's a very challenging build, but this only really has 4 or 5 motors in it, so it should be a pretty easy build. I haven't fully figured out how I'm going to mount the motors that control the loading arm here, so today I'm going to do the rear drive motor and the steering servo, and I might have to come back to the drive motor for the front at a later date, so in a follow-up video. To add the motors we're going to have to take the model apart, so let's get started. We might be able to split the model in half first here if we just take out this screw. Okay, that's the first half gone. So I'm not going to worry too much about this part today. I'm going to focus on putting the motors in the rear of the model. The cab just clips off the model there. You can see we have these little edges on these plastic arms here. So to get the cab off, you're probably supposed to squeeze the bottom of the cab together and then lift it off that way. This little steering assembly just sits in there. That's probably be good enough place to hide the radio module, maybe just in the middle of this, because all of this cab appears to be plastic. So we should be able to get the radio signal through the plastic cab pretty easily. If it was die cast we'd run into issues there, but we shouldn't have too much trouble with this model. This is a nice model the way it can be taken apart so easily. There's only a few screws. There's nothing really glued together in any extreme way. You know, like the Universal Hobbies model was very difficult to take apart. This is all screws. It's very simple. So this is going to be the first bit I need to modify. It just comes apart like that. So I need to get the motor positioned in here. So basically what I'm going to do is just cut a rectangular shape this out of the bottom here. That will fit the motor in, and then I'm going to try and make a cover that will fit over the motor and hold it in place, and I'll screw it in there and there, for example, and that should be the first motor mounted in place. The axle on the loader there seems to be roughly the same level as if the axle was just running flat on this this underside of the model here. So I'm just going to measure the distance from the top of this shaft to the top of the motor here. So about 4 millimeters. Around about 4 millimeters, and I'm going to cut down 4 millimeters. I'm going to cut down 4 millimeters into the body here, which should let the motor into the right height. I've marked out where I'm going to cut here, so I'm just going to get the multi-tool with the little grinding wheel on it and see can I cut around this this part of the model and get it off. I'll probably try and get this thing off in one piece, just in case I ever need something to hold an axle on a, maybe if I make a trailer or something, that might come in useful at some stage. So I'll try and hold on to that. Okay, I removed this thing and cut this section out of the body here. I cut away the other one of these from this side, and now the motor sits in there just like that. It's held by this and by these two sides of the body, so it can't move in either of those directions. So what I'm going to have to do is drill a hole here and here, make a little case to cover over this, and I'll be able to fix it so that it can't slide side to side either. That's my next plan. I'll probably make that out of copper maybe. Okay, so I have the rear drive motor to some extent sorted out. I just have to finish off the cover to hold it in place. So the next problem I want to tackle is the steering. Now, my original intention had been to mount this motor, this servo, inside the model here somewhere, so probably back here somewhere, and put an arm over to it so I could steer the model using the servo that way. But the more I look at it, I can't really get the servo mounted anywhere easily into the model, that it won't either stand out or that it won't limit the steering capability of the model. So I have a new plan. I'm thinking I'll use this N20 gear motor. So if we look here, this is the front of the model, and this connects in here, and you put this piece down on the bottom to hold it in place. So what I'm thinking I'll do is I'll cut off this little piece. I'll try and mill a 3mm hole with the keyed piece into this die cast here, this aluminium. I'll try and make that shape in it so that you put this piece on, the model will go in like that. This bit won't be here. Then when I have that made in this end of the model, I'll mount a N20 gear motor, something like that there, so that when we want to put the model together, just slide it up in there, put this piece on the bottom, and that should hold the motor in place. Then next thing I have to do is cut a hole through the bottom of this so that when this goes up, that the motor will stick up through here. And when the motor's sticking up through here, this steering assembly will fit on top of it, and that hides the motor. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be the best way to do it. Okay, now that I have somewhat of a plan, I better take this part of the model apart and see can we actually do that. Inside this there might be no space, so we'll just check that out now. Ah, perfect. There's absolutely nothing in here, so that's ideal for what we need. It's just a matter of modifying this part to take the gear motor here. So I'm going to need to try and remove this and then cut this 3mm hole with the key into this bit of die cast if I can. So if I can't get the keyed end over here, what I'll do is drill this out to 3mm, and I'll drill a hole here to 1.6mm, and I'll tap that to M2. So then when I put this down, I'll have the bolt here. I can tighten the bolt up to whatever angle it's needed to get this turning. I wasn't able to mill the little keyed piece into the hole here, so what I did was drill this hole to 3mm. That lets the motor fit in there, no problem, and that spins around. So to catch the key section here, I drilled another hole closer to the front of the model, that's 2.5mm. Then I tapped that to M3. Then I got some copper, but it doesn't have to be copper, you can use whatever you want. I have two little pieces of 2mm thick copper, so 4mm in total, and I filed off a section to be the keyed part for the motor, so that flat section mates to the motor output shaft here, and they just go in here and screw into place here. And now the keyed section is in the shaft here. You should be just about able to see the flat end here. That's going to catch the motor, and this is flush, so that shouldn't interfere with anything. So I'll put the bottom back on it. That'll go back in there, and now our motor can sit in here. If I get the key right, there we go. So our motor sits in like that, and that holds the model together. So just to show you, if I hold the motor, we can spin the front of the model around. So the next thing I need to do is fix this motor in place. So I have to mill the piece out of this upper part of the body to let it in, and make sure that the motor is secured so that it can't spin. I've noticed that the gearbox on the motor is around about 9mm, and this section that separates this part of the body here to the upper part is just about 10 millimeters. So I'm thinking to stop the motor spinning, the easiest solution would just be to cut the slot here very precisely the size of the motor, so that when I put it down on top of the motor, the upper body will stop this motor from spinning around. That should make it a lot easier than trying to get a bolt in under here. If we fix it from the top instead, that make things a little bit simpler. Here's my motor mounted on the body now. The body is clamping down on top of the gearbox here, so these little corner pieces, it's tightened down on top of those. I miscalculated the width a bit, so I had to add a little bit of FR4 substrate, just a little shim in there, so to stop the motor spinning, or to take a little bit of play out of the motor. There is still a bit at the pin end, but it's not too bad. Not too surprisingly, it's rather hard for the motor to turn the model, especially when it has two solid axles, so basically you're trying to drag the tyres around. So I had to switch to the 7.4 volt battery to do this, but I don't think the end result is too bad. I seem to have enough power with the 7.4 volt battery to spin around the body. I don't think the servo would have been fit for this. I probably would have had to get a bigger servo, but I think this has worked out pretty well. I probably would have wanted to use 7.4 or maybe even 11 volt LiPo battery for the screw mechanisms on the front anyway. That's what I'm going to do with the Komatsu PC400, just to give the arms a little bit more power. The only problem using the 7.4 volt battery is that the drive motors are 3.6 volt motors, so I'll have to get a voltage regulator for the drive motors, which isn't a big job. We have a huge amount of space in the back here, especially when we've used such a small motor for the steering. We've saved a huge amount of space there. The steering took longer than I expected, so I've run out of time again this weekend. So in the next episode, I guess I'll have to modify this little thing to account for the motor. I just have to cut a little bit off the base of the seat and the steering column there, and that should fit in there, no problem. That should be fine, shouldn't be able to see that too much. I have to make the piece that covers the motor for the bottom of this rear motor here. So I need to make a little case to cover over that and hold it in place so that it can't move around. I suppose in the next video I'll run the wires back into the model here, get the Arduino running, and then I'll be able to test out some steering maybe. I might even add the LEDs on the back, just depends how much time I end up having. I leave the front drive motor to last, because I'd rather have the motors on the lifting arm working and find out that I've no space for a front drive motor, than to mount the front drive motor and find out that I've no space for the lifting arm motors. So I'm going to do the lifting arm motors before I think about the drive motor. But in the next video anyway, it'll be finishing off this steering and the undercarriage here and putting some wires around so that we can see this thing driving. Make sure that this motor can deal with the steering, and that we can get a voltage regulator for the drive motors, which all should be fairly straightforward stuff. We just have to test it out. So if you like this build, make sure and hit the like button and share it and all that stuff. It all helps grow the blog quite a bit. And if you have any questions, head over to the forum, or any suggestions either. You can head over to the forum and let me know what you think is best. This model has steel railings, by the way, which is a nice feature. Most of the models have only flimsy little plastic railings that break very easily, but this thing has quite good railings. It's quite a good model, this. Well, the lights are a bit crap, but the railings are pretty good. And if you want to see the rest of this build, make sure and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the notification when the rest of it's up. And that's pretty much everything, so thanks very much for watching.